G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here with another SOLASTA Crown of the Magister build video. Today we're doing a build of the Shock Arcanist Battle Mage, or Battle Wizard. Let's dive on in. So, what makes a good wizard in SOLASTA? Well, you can create a fairly decent wizard out of any of the characters, any of the races that is available in the game. But there are three races that stand out a little bit to me. The first one is the Marsh Halfling. Now the reason they stand out is they have a bonus to dexterity, which is helpful. Not as helpful with this build as you might think, but it's not bad, okay? They have advantage on save throws from being frightened, and they are lucky, so if they roll a 1 on an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw, they can re-roll. And that can be really useful, okay? The +1 to Constitution and the movement through swampy terrain is also a nice feature to have, okay? Because we want the Constitution, we want a few more hit points than normal because you only get 6 hit points per level minus Constitution bonuses as a wizard. So you want health, and the extra Constitution there is going to be useful. So the other race then that really stands out, of course, is the Dwarves. And you can pick either Dwarf, the Hill Dwarf, although they have a slight advantage, or you could pick the Snow Dwarf. Their advantage against poison is useful in some situations, but overall, you, as a dwarf, get a +2 to Constitution, which is going to be very useful, get you that extra health, and you're going to get +1 hit point per level. So if you want to go the real hardcore battle mage, that's what I recommend, is going Hill Dwarf. Okay? The other one is to go High Elf. This will give you +2 to Dexterity, like you got as a Halfling. Your save throw advantage against charm, and you're immune to sleep, which is very useful against enemy spellcasters. You've got dark vision, that's great, and you have a +1 to intelligence. And as a high elf, you also get an extra cantrip, which can be really good. For this build, because I want the health more than anything, I'm going to choose Hill Dwarf. Okay, so 1 extra hit points per level, plus an extra 2 Constitution, which is basically a second hit point per level. That's going to be really nice. So we want to pick a wizard. We're going to get save throw proficiencies with intelligence and wisdom. We can use Dart, Dagger, or Quarterstaff. That's fine, but I really think Quarterstaff is the only weapon that is useful to you. Because the others just don't do enough damage. And you really do want the weapon in your hand. You can look at it one way and say you're never going to use it, but you actually might use it. If someone gets up close to you and you get an opportunity to do an attack of opportunity, having the quarterstaff there is going to be better than punching them, for example, or potentially using a dagger. It depends. But if you find a really nice magical dagger, that can be an option as well. You get to choose 2 skills, which I think is not enough for the wizard. I think the wizard should have more than 2 skills, but you can pick 2 skills from Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, and Religion. And you, of course, get spells from the wizard spell list. You can cast spells that are marked as ritual without having to prepare them, which is great, and you can craft magical scrolls and enchant equipment, which later in the game is going to be really useful to you. So, your starting equipment, I definitely recommend going with the quarterstaff. Now, there is the component pouch, right? And there is the orb or the wand. That wand is not like a wand of magic missiles. It doesn't do anything, okay? These items, you have to have, well, the game says you have to have one item that has the spell focus property on it, but you don't, because I have tried taking that off my mage and giving it to somebody else, and he's still able to successfully cast spells. So whether they fix that up later on in the game or not, I don't know, but at this point you don't need it. But it's easier just to take the component pouch for now. If you feel like taking the orb or the wand instead, that's fine, but they're going to sit in the slot that you normally have potions in, okay? That quick slot. So yeah, do whatever you want. Scholar's Pack is slightly better with starting equipment for crafting scrolls than the Explorer's Pack. And then, of course, you get a spell book. Again, I don't think you actually need the spell book on you, but don't sell it. I don't recommend doing that in case they change the rules. And then your Adventuring Wizard's clothes that you get, that's just standard, but it provides basically no significant protection. It's just you're relying on your dex for that. So we're going to take that default equipment and move on. Sorry, there are 3 arcane traditions, and we are going to be concentrating on the Shock Arcanist because it is the best one. It makes it so that any of these spells listed here, Burning Hands, Magic Missile, Thunderwave, which are those are the first level spells, and then Acid Arrow, Scorching Ray, and Flaming Sphere, second level spells, and then Fireball and Lightning Bolt, third level spells. They are all able to be cast at one higher level than they actually are. You don't have to expend a slot at a higher level. It just automatically does that for you. Which means that at first level, a Magic Missile, which normally shoots 3 missiles, now shoots 4. So that's an increase of significant amounts of damage at first level. You can't take that at second level, because you can't take that at first. So we will move on. Now, backgrounds. Normally, I would say the backgrounds to look at for a wizard would be things like academic or lawkeeper or philosopher, but we are going to go with Sellsword. And the reason we're going with Sellsword is this gives you a proficiency with medium armor. Nothing else. It just allows you to wear medium armor, and it doesn't affect your spellcasting ability at all. Right? So you can start the game with medium armor. You don't get it automatically. You have to buy it, but you can buy medium armor at the start after you finish the little tutorial thing, and you are going to be more armored than any other mage in the game. And later on, when you get the best of the medium armor, which is half plate, use it because it will make you not completely invincible, but for a mage, you will be very, very well protected. I'm not going to recommend any particular personality flags. Choose whichever ones you want. I do authority and kindness and authority and kindness, and we're going to leave this on lawful good. Play however you want. So, ability rolls. Normally, I say that I don't want any of these rolls less than 10. Okay? Little bit different for this battle mage. I'm recommending you have to have at least 8 in everything. So, strength, you want at least 8. Dexterity should be 14. No ifs, ands, or buts. Make it 14. You get no benefit from going any higher because all of the medium armor allows you to put 2 points of your dexterity bonus on top of the armor. And that is what 14 gives you. So does 15, but, use 14 there. Constitution, we really want that as high as possible. So I'm going to say 16 plus here. And that's easy to get with the Hill Dwarf because he gets a +2. So you could even take a 14 in there and get it to 16. But if you can get that to 18 at the start, do it. Intelligence, 16 plus. The higher your intelligence is, the harder it is for enemies to make a save against your spells, if your spells have a save, and also the more likely you are to hit with ranged spells. Any spell that says it needs a ranged hit it will use your proficiency bonus here, plus whatever your intelligence bonus is to determine if you've hit. So this is unlike games like Neverwinter Nights and Pathfinder Kingmaker, where you actually had to use your dexterity to hit for those sorts of spells. It's now intelligence. Okay? So you really want your intelligence as high as possible. That's why it's not a big deal to have dex at 14. Wisdom. You really only need a 10 in wisdom. It is nice to have a higher wisdom save throw, but it's not essential. Okay? Mostly because you can get spells that will give you protection against a lot of the things that are wisdom based anyway. And as a wizard, you get a higher wisdom save throw. And then charisma. You don't need charisma as much as some other classes do. You could probably let that go to 8 if you really had to. I'm going to, well, there we go. That's a pretty good roll. I'm going to take that roll. So I'm going to put 18 into intelligence. I'm going to put the 16 into con, which gives me 18 for con. I'm going to put the 14 into dex. I'm going to put the, it doesn't really matter. I'll put the 11 into strength, and then these two will be 10. But that meets my requirements of 8 plus, 14, 16 plus, 16 plus, 10 plus, 8 plus. So that's a good roll. You know, if you can get any of these other ones higher than that and you want to, that's fine. If you can get your intelligence higher at the start, that's fine. But you don't need to. It would be nice to have that at 19 or 20. Getting it to 20 to begin with is going to be impossible because you don't have a bonus to intelligence. So you're going to have to stick with 18 as the highest you can go, unless you do the point by infinite system, and then you can put it at whatever you want. But that's a really good roll. So we'll go with that. Skills. Now, you can take any of these: Arcana, History, Investigation, Religion, Insight, or Medicine. Here are the ones that I think are useful. Medicine, I've never used it, so I don't know how useful it is. I've not seen how you can use it to stabilize a dying companion, though. So the only thing I know that it's able to be used for so far in the game is crafting healing potions. But you have to be able to cast a healing spell, and there are no wizard healing spells. So unless you can cast Cure Light Wounds, you can't make a Cure Light Wounds potion. So I wouldn't take that. Arcana is definitely useful, so I'm going to take that. History can be useful, but I think either Insight or Investigation is probably the better ones. I find Insight more often than not is useful, but we don't have a huge bonus to our Wisdom, so you might want to consider taking Investigation because we've got a pretty high Investigation already. So actually, I think I will do that. So we'll take Arcana and Investigation. History is just as useful, but there we go. Languages, again, I say this with most of these. If you have a party that has basically all of the main races, you know, you have a human, you have a dwarf, you have an elf, you have a halfling, then you will not need to take dwarvish, elvish, halfling, common, and so you can concentrate on either the Terran or Old Temerian, and I would recommend taking Old Temerian, if nothing else, or have someone in your party with Old Temerian, and then you can also consider taking a giant goblin or orcish if you want to be able to speak to the enemies later on in the game, but that doesn't come into the early access at this time. So, if you're still playing this in early access, maybe don't consider those, just pick Old Temerian. Otherwise, if the game's no longer in early access, some of those languages, and there may be other languages, they might be useful as well. The spells and cantrips now. I'm going to just get comfy here because we are going to go through all of these spells and I'm going to talk about them. Okay, so settle in. Acid Splash. Okay, it's a medium range spell. It's always going to hit, right? But they can save to negate the damage. So the advantage is it will hit, but they can save. Okay, now why is that useful? There is a penalty if you have a spell like Chill Touch here, which is a ranged hit rather than an automatic hit. And this doesn't tell you it's automatic, but if it doesn't say ranged hit under the range section, it means it will hit, but there's a save throw involved. So on Chill Touch, there is no save throw, but it's a ranged hit. So you have to, it's like shooting a bow at them. And the problem is if they are right next to you, you get if there is an opponent right next to you, there is a disadvantage for you to do a ranged hit. So you're better off using a spell that is always guaranteed to hit. It doesn't matter if you're shooting at the opponent next to you, or you're trying to attack another opponent somewhere else. If there's an opponent next to you, they interfere with your ability to do a distance attack, a ranged attack. Okay, so you will get disadvantage on that if you use, say, Chill Touch. But if you used Acid Splash instead, it would be better. Now, the other thing that Acid Splash can do is you can hit two targets that are right next to each other. So if you find a situation where there are two targets right next to each other and you want to use this, that's a good cantrip to use. Doesn't have as much damage as some. It only does 1d6 of damage, but it is still very good. As you go up in levels, at level 5, 11, and 17, you add an extra d6 to the damage. But early game, it'll do 1d6, but it can do 2 opponents. That's its big advantage. Annoying Bee, another guaranteed to hit. It is a medium range at 12. It only distracts your opponent, but only for a single round. So they get disadvantage on their concentration for their next round, or until their next round. Okay, so that can be useful, but I find it's very specific that you're only going to really want to use this against enemy spellcasters, and that's enemy spellcasters that are currently concentrating on something. Okay, so whether that's flying, whether that's they've dropped a globe of darkness on you, or they've charmed someone, anything like that, that would be useful for, but I really didn't find it that useful. Chill Touch. Long range, but it is a hit. It does 1d8 of damage, and it inflicts the chilled status, which means that they cannot regain hit points for the next round, so it prevents them healing for a limited time. And if they are undead, they also get disadvantage if they try and attack you, the caster. Okay, so that actually is a pretty good cantrip. Dancing Lights. This is a long-range spell, and it lights up not a very big range at all, actually, and you can move it. So it lasts for 1 minute or 6 rounds. The problem with it, or is it 10 rounds? I can't remember if a round is 6 seconds or 10 seconds. But anyway, it lasts for a minute, so it lasts for several rounds. The problem with this is it doesn't light up a huge area. Okay? So you can't put it like on the same square as an opponent. So you've got to put it right in front of them to be sure that it lights them up. But this is short of like the clerical fairy fire spell. This is really the only way to light up an opponent at a distance. You cannot use the light cantrip for that. You have to use dancing lights to do it. Okay? So it is definitely one that you should consider taking. You're not necessarily going to need it as much being a hill dwarf and you have dark vision, but it does still affect, the lighting does still affect your ability to hit opponents. If your opponents are in dim or complete darkness, then you do get disadvantage on attacks. So this can be useful to get rid of that. But remember, that's disadvantage on things like a ranged attack. Any spell like Acid Splash that is guaranteed to hit, you don't need Dancing Lights to help you with, because you're guaranteed to hit. Okay, the distance, the lighting doesn't affect it. Okay, Dazzle. This lowers your target's armor class for 1 round, and they don't get a reaction attack, so they can't do an attack of opportunity. And if they have set up a reaction to do something like, a reaction melee attack or a reaction missile attack or whatever, they cannot use that. But it is a melee hit attack, so you have to use it at close range. You have to be able to touch the opponent. You've got to be right next to them. So I don't find it a useful spell because of that, because ideally as a mage you don't want to be up that close if you can help it. This mage can survive better than most, but ideally you want to be doing stuff from a distance. Firebolt. Firebolt is the go-to damage dealing spell, but it is a ranged hit, so you can miss, and if it's dark and you can't see the target, you're going to have disadvantage. And again, if you use it when there is an opponent standing next to you, you're also going to get disadvantage. So be aware of all of those limitations, but if it hits, they don't save. They take 1 to 10 points of damage, and at levels 5, 11, and 17, that goes up by 1 extra die. But if you want to do the most damage, that's the most damage dealing cantrip there is. Okay, light. This spell threw me for this cantrip threw me for a I don't know. It really, I didn't expect it to work the way it did. I thought I could use it like dancing lights, but you cannot. All you can do is light up one item you are carrying. Now, that if you click, there's a little icon that you can click on the interface, which will automatically light up your current weapon. But you don't have to do that if you want. If you want, you can manually go and cast the spell and do it like click on your belt pouch, your component pouch, or your backpack, or your armor, things like that, and that will work just as well. It's a fairly bright light source. It lasts for an hour. You're probably going to want one person in the group who can cast that, if you don't want someone carrying a torch or a candle. And be aware, candles don't provide as much light as a torch. So, yes. Poison Spray. Poison Spray is a short range, extremely short range, because it's basically only 2 distance. It affects one opponent and you spray acid at them. It does 1 to 12 points of damage, so technically it's more than the Firebolt, but they can save to avoid it. So it's always going to hit, but they can save to avoid the damage. I have never used it because of its short range. I don't really want to have opponents that close. Okay? Ray of Frost. A ranged hit, medium range. It does 1d8 points of damage, but it also hinders them, so it sets their movement speed to -2, slows them down for a single round. It's okay, and the hindering can be useful, but it only slows them down by 2. It doesn't like completely freeze them and stop them from moving. Okay, it would be nice if it did, but it doesn't. Shadow Armor grants 3 temporary hit points for 1 minute. I don't see the point in it. 3 hit points is not enough in a lot of cases to save you. I mean, sure, you can say, yep, 3 hit points can be the difference between life and death in some situations, but it's not enough for me to justify taking that as a cantrip. Because it's not like you can spam it and give yourself, do it 6 times, and well, I don't think you can, and give yourself a whole bunch of extra hit points. Okay. Shadow Dagger. This is one of my go-to spells. It's long range. It's guaranteed to hit. It has a 1d8 point of damage, which they can save to negate. And it's a wisdom save throw, which is a save throw that generally seems to be pretty hard for most opponents to make. Okay? So I like that spell. That is pretty much my go-to damage-dealing cantrip most of the time, particularly if opponents get in close. Because it's guaranteed to hit, you don't have the disadvantage of trying to do a ranged attack like a Firebolt. Shocking Grasp. Again, I don't use it because it's a melee hit. It does do 1d8 points of damage. It shocks them so that they can't use reactions, but I don't think it's worth it being a melee one. Again, you don't want them in that close. And True Strike. So It's a short range, only distance of 6. It only lasts a single round, but it gives you advantage on your attack against that, your first attack against that target. I don't see this as being useful either, because, you know, I'd rather be doing damage that round than setting up my ability to attack next round. So we need to pick 3 of these. My recommendations are probably Dancing Light, and Shadow Dagger are the 3 that I would normally pick, but the other ones in the list that I've said that I like, Chill Touch is useful, Acid Splash being able to hit 2 is good, and it always hits. Chill Touch doesn't always hit, but the ability to debuff so that they can't heal, and it debuffs undead is useful, and then Firebolt is good for good damage at a distance. So those are the other ones that I like there. But I think, generally speaking, Dancing Lights helps you to light up a target so that anybody can hit it from a distance. Light helps you just keep the group lit up, which helps you in general. And then Shadow Dagger is a nice distance one. It never misses, and it's got a save throw that, generally speaking, opponents won't always have the best wisdom save throw abilities, so it can be quite good for that. So, first level spells then. We get to pick 6 of these. Now, there are a lot that I recommend. There's a lot to go through. Burning Hands. It is a good spell, okay? It does 3d6 worth of damage, and if they save, they take half damage, which is good. But the lineup of the cone is really annoying because it will only really hit 1 person directly in front of you and then 3 behind it, etc. Okay? So if you've got a couple of enemies directly in front of you, you're probably not going to be able to point it at the right angle to get both of them. Okay? So it's a spell that's useful if your opponents do get right in your face, which you don't really want them to ever do, but if you do, it's useful for that. But I find there's a better spell we'll talk about in a minute. But you could still take it if you want that damage dealing, because you can still do some damage at a distance to other opponents if they're grouped up. But be aware it's going to do damage to your companions as well, so you do want to get into the right position to use it. Charm Person. It's short range. There is a save to negate it, even though it is the will save, which is going to be generally harder, and it lasts for an hour, which is good, but all it does is stop that opponent from attacking the caster. It doesn't do that to anybody else in the party. So all it really does is switch their focus so they won't attack you, they will attack someone else. Now, if you expect that you're going to be attacked in melee range a lot, or short range missile attack, it might be useful, but I don't really like it as a spell. Color Spray. Short range cone, blinds for 1 minute. For 1 round. So that is useful, but again, the cone isn't really all that useful for. The layout of the cone isn't that great. It makes it hard to target. But, if you like blinding your opponent, that can be useful. Detect Magic. You really want this spell because it allows you to determine if objects that you've picked up are magical. Having said that, most of the time you know when you pick it up just by the description of the object that it is something special. So if you didn't want to take Detect Magic and you just wanted to take Identify instead, that would probably work. As a ritual, if you use it as a ritual, it takes 10 minutes, but you actually can memorize it and cast it like a normal spell, and it is instantaneous, but I don't recommend doing that because it takes away from the other spells that you can cast for the day. So I do recommend taking it, just don't memorize it as one of your spells to cast for the day. Okay? Expeditious Retreat. This speeds up your movement. No, sorry. It allows you to use dash as a bonus action for 10 minutes. like, that can be useful, but it only affects you, nobody else. So you can't make anybody else run faster. It's a, oh crap, I have to get out of here type situation because you're about to die. I don't know. I don't find it useful, so I don't take it. False Life. This is like the Shadow Armor before. It's temporary hit points. Now, admittedly, it's 5 to 8 temporary, or 5 to 9. No, 5 to 8 temporary hit points. And they last for an hour. But I don't really think it's that useful. I would prefer actual armor class and permanent hit points. Your results may vary. Featherfall. So this can be cast as a reaction, which is useful. Okay, and it allows you to land safely, or for an ally to land safely. So if a companion falls, you can use it. I don't recommend taking it, but if you find it, learn it from the scroll. If you find a scroll of it, okay, and that goes for all of the spells here that I don't really recommend. If you find them and you want to use them, sure. Fog Cloud. This one is, yeah, it's good, but it isn't. So it's a 4-meter cloud at long range that lasts for an hour. Any opponent in the cloud is heavily obscured, so they get a disadvantage on attack rolls against you, and you get an advantage against them. It's supposed to be, well, it's the description here talks about your ability to control it, but I don't think you can. Not like the Dancing Light. Okay? It also, which I haven't mentioned with some of these other ones, it requires concentration, which Detect Magic does, Expeditious Retreat does, False Life doesn't. So that requires concentration. So if you get hit, or there's a couple other things that can affect concentration, then you may lose the ability to control it and it'll disappear. So be aware of that. I have used it. It can be useful, but there's nothing stopping your opponent from moving out of the cloud, unless you position it really well into a position where they sort of can't get out. If you drop the cloud so the cloud ends right in front of your melee characters, and your melee characters are standing in a doorway, for example, then your opponents will still be in the cloud when they attack, and you'll be out of the cloud, you'll get advantage against them, they'll have disadvantage against you, that type of thing. Okay? Hideous Laughter. It's a short-range spell against one opponent. It affects them for 1 minute, and they can save using Wisdom. And it makes them incapacitated, and they can save each turn to attempt to break that, and you have to concentrate on it as well. It is a good spell. If you find an enemy spellcaster and you drop this on them and it works, it's great. It works really, really well. But unfortunately, it's the enemy spellcasters that are more likely to have a high Wisdom save. Okay? I don't believe it works on undead, but it works on most other humanoids, I believe. I haven't tested fully on everything that it works on. Identify. As I said, good spell to have. Allows you to identify the properties of an item. Now, if you haven't identified the properties of an item and you try and use it, it will do nothing. So if you find a potion of healing, for example, greater healing or superior healing or whatever, and you look at it and go, I know that's a potion of greater healing. If you haven't identified it, you can't use it. Same goes for magic rings. If you find a ring and you go, oh, that's probably a ring of protection, you put it on, it'll do nothing until you identify it. Okay? So be aware of that. You do want to identify things. Now, you can pay for things to get identified when you go back to town, but if you're out and about and you want to use them straight away, identify. Also be aware, in early access, at the time of this video, there is a bug in the game where some items seem to lose their identification. So I have identified particularly healing potions, and then I've slept and woken up and those potions are no longer identified. Okay? So if you have a mage, you just want to routinely go through and find all of the potions and any items that you've got that are magical, that are not identified, and re-identify them so that you can be sure you can use them. Okay? Jump. I have found uses for this, but it's very specific. And quite frankly, you can find potions of jump and fly and spider climb that are probably more useful than taking the spell. If you find a scroll of jump and you want to transcribe that into your spellbook and learn it that way, go right ahead. But generally speaking, I wouldn't take this. It lasts for a minute. It allows you to jump an increased distance. It doesn't really tell you how far that is. There is also, as of early access, there is a little bug in that as long as you have clicked on the location that you want to land at, even if it's, on the other side of the map, right? So the chasm that you have to jump across is on the other side of the map. As long as you click on that location for that character before the spell runs out, it can take 5 minutes for the person to run all the way around the map to get to that location, and they will still be able to make that jump. Technically, that doesn't make logical sense, and you sort of look at it like, well, they might never actually fix that, but that's a bug I've experienced with this. Okay, Mage Armor. This is a standard for all mages. You can cast it on any ally who's not wearing armor. It lasts for 8 hours, and it grants you an armor class of 13 plus whatever your dexterity bonus is. So it's really good, but you don't want it because you can wear armor. And as soon as you put armor on, so you can't cast it if you're wearing armor, and if you put armor on, the spell dissipates. So don't bother taking this spell. Magic Missile, the go-to wizard spell. It is, what are the 2 spells that the wizard casts? Fireball and Magic Missile. All right? As a Shock Arcanist, you're going to be able to cast an extra missile per level. Okay? So if you cast this as a first level spell, once you get your Shock Arcanist ability at level 2, you'll be able to cast 4 rather than 3. You'll be able to do 4 targets rather than 3. You can cast them all at the same target, or you can split them up as much as you want between however many missiles you've got. It's a long-range spell at 24, so it is really good. It always hits. So as long as you can see the opponent, you can hit them with this spell. It is the best way to go. So at first level, with 3 targets, you're going to be doing 6 to 15 points of damage. And of course, as soon as you get Shock Arcanist ability that allows you to cast that as 1 extra level, it's going to be 8 to 20 points of damage. So yes, that's not per missile, that's grouped together, because none of them will miss. If you aim them all at a single target, you will do 8 to 20 points of damage to that target that round. Now, also be aware that you can cast this at a higher level. So if you're able to cast 2nd level spells, you can choose to cast this using the energy from a 2nd level spell slot rather than a 1st level. You don't have to prepare anything, you can just do that. And that will add an extra missile to it. So once you've got your Shock Arcanist ability, you cast it as a 2nd level, you will get 5 missiles, not 4. And if you go as a 3rd level spell, you will get 6 missiles, not 5, etc. So, great spell to use. Always keep it handy if you can. Protect versus good and evil. The only thing I see... first of all, it affects 1 target. Doesn't have to be you. You have to touch your target, and it lasts for 10 minutes. So that's not a great duration, but it's not bad. If you know a battle's coming up, click it and get it on. You have to maintain concentration, which is annoying. But it gives certain creatures, aberrations, celestials, elementals, fays, fiends, and undeads, disadvantages to attack you, and they cannot charm frighten, or possess whoever this is cast on. And whoever you cast this on can re-roll saves with advantage if they are already charmed, frightened, or possessed. So it's good in those select cases. Personally, I don't recommend taking this spell unless you find it on a scroll, in which case learn it, and then if you want to use it, go right ahead. Shield. This is a spell you're going to want, okay? You cast it as a reaction, and it adds +5 to your armor class. That's it. That's the way it works. Now, it's my understanding that I always thought the shield spell was supposed to be used in that when you got attacked, you decided whether you wanted to use shield or not before you knew whether you were going to be hit. But this is implemented, and even the reading of it here is increase your armor class by 5 just before you would take a hit. So you will see in the game that there are times when opponents will attack you and miss, and it doesn't prompt you, but then they will attack and it'll prompt you, do you want to use shield? And if you go no, they will hit you. It's not that they, that they are missing. They are going to hit. So be aware of that. But it takes a spell slot away that you can't then use for anything else. The other advantage, though, is that it lasts for the rest of that round. So if there are multiple opponents around you, and they are all going to attack you this round, when the first one swings, and if he hits, and it says, do you want to take this? You pick yes, even if it's the last spell slot you've got, because every other opponent that then attacks you, your armor class is 5 higher, because it lasts until the end of the round. Okay, it lasts until the start of your next turn. Sleep. I really don't find it that useful. It's medium range. It covers a 4 square area. It lasts for 1 minute, and it makes them asleep until someone actually wakes them, which is nice, but I just don't feel that it works very well. Now, if you cast it at a higher spell level, you can add 2 extra dice to the opponents that it affects. So that allows it to potentially affect more opponents. Frankly, I've played through the game twice fully now, and I think I've only been once has anyone actually managed to put any of my characters to sleep with it. And I've tried to use it a small handful of times, 2 or 3 times, and never was able to put anything asleep with it. So I tend to find it not very useful. Thunderwave. This is your close-in combat specialist. It targets 3 cubes, a 3-cube square cell starting from directly in front of you. So if there are 3 opponents lined up directly in front of you, perpendicular, not parallel, then you can hit all 3 of them. But if there was 9 in a cube in front of you, you'd be able to hit all of them. Okay? It does 2d8 of damage, and they can save for half, and it also pushes them 2 squares away, and it'll put out any fires in the area as well. It does a lot. You can cast it at higher levels, and it will do more damage if you cast it as a 2nd level spell or a 3rd or whatever. But what I find is this is the best spell at close range rather than Burning Hands. It does slightly less damage. Yes, it does slightly less damage because that's 3d6, which is 18. This is 2d8, which is 16. So it does slightly less damage than Burning Hands, but it's much easier to aim at the creatures that are right in front of you. So if you do think you're going to end up with enemies in front of you, then it's a great spell to have. So what would I pick? The 6 that I would pick? Well, I would go Detect Magic and Identify. Definitely want Magic, Missile, and Shield. And then the last 2, I would probably pick Thunderwave as a close-up damage dealer. And then I would probably go Hideous Laughter as a way to, take out one opponent and incapacitate them, because that's always a useful thing to do. So that's my recommendation for first level. Now, the other thing to be aware of, Burning Hands, Magic Missile, and Thunderwave are all those spells which are buffed so that you get them at an extra level. So even though that says it does 2d8 points of damage, it actually does 3d8 points of damage from level 2 onwards. Okay? And while this one says it does 3d6 points of damage from level 2 onwards, it'll do 4d6. And we've already talked about Magic Missile. So you definitely, if you get to take another spell later, take Burning Hands. You will want it. And so let's go on. So that's what I'm going to recommend there. Doesn't matter what you pick for your identity and how you look, etc. So we'll move on. And now let's level up to level 2. So we gained 9 more hit points, which is unbelievable for a mage. And you're at 20 hit points at level 2, which is brilliant. And hopefully by this point, you've actually got an armor class which will be up around about 15 or 16, depending on the armor that you manage to get. I think the low level, so scale mail, I think is +3 or +4. So you should be around 15 or 16, which is comparable to what you would get with the mage armor spell, but you're not having to use up a spell slot to protect yourself. Okay? And probably around about level 3, 4, maybe 5, somewhere around there. And I know in early access you will find some half plate armor. Take that as soon as you can. And I think that gets you up to like 19, 18 or 19. So you definitely want that. We get to pick our Arcane tradition now. So we are definitely going to go Shock Arcanist. I believe this is the best of the traditions. The Green Mage gives you access to light armor and some spells, and quite frankly, the spells from this list, the only one that I really like is Fairy Fire, which works better than the Dancing Lights to light up your opponent, but it's a first level spell, it's not a cantrip. So you can only use it a limited number of times. So that's why I think the Shock Arcanist is a better option. We get to choose 2 more spells, so we are definitely going to take Burning Hands, whether we're going to use it much or not. And I'm also going to take Fog Cloud, because it's a nice way to debuff your opponents by making it hard for them to attack you. So, at level 3, we get our first 3rd level spell. And, sorry, not 3rd level, 2nd level spells. So let's talk about 2nd level spells. Acid Arrow. It's a medium range, but it's a ranged hit, so you could miss. And if you're doing it with an opponent next to you, you're going to do it at disadvantage. The target needs to be well lit, etc. But if it hits, it does 44 points of damage, and it is one of the spells in the war list. So you will actually do 5d4 points of damage at this point. You can also raise it up beyond a level 2 spell, so you could cast it as a level 3 and make it do 6d4 of damage. And the opponent is acidified, so they take acid damage each turn until they save against it, basically. So it is a good spell, does damage over time. The only disadvantage is you've got to hit with it first. Okay? Blindness. Only affects a single opponent, and it's short range at 6 cells. And the blindness lasts for a minute, which is okay. They can't see anything, so they get disadvantages on attacks, and anyone attacking them has advantage, so that's, reasonably good, but it only affects a single target. Frankly, even though Color Spray lasts less, it probably is more effective because it can blind more people. Blur is a nice buff for you that makes you harder to hit for 1 minute. So any creature that attacks you has disadvantage. I wouldn't necessarily take it immediately, but if you find a scroll of blur and you want to take it, definitely it can be useful. Darkness. Medium range at 12 distance, it creates a 3 square ball of magical darkness that lasts for 10 minutes. Heavily obscured, so they get a disadvantage on attack rolls. Attacks against them have advantage. They can't see anything. It puts out any lights, extinguishes all light sources in that area. It is a nice debuff, so if you want it, take it. It's not on the war list because it's not, well, it could be on the war list because it is an evocation, but it's not. It doesn't do damage, so it's probably like a secondary spell for me. Dark Vision is useless to you, but you can use it to grant Dark Vision to your opponents. Not your opponents, your companions. It lasts 8 hours, which is good, but personally I'd rather use the spell slot on something that does damage. It's another one of those, if you find it on a scroll and want to learn it, great. Flaming Sphere. I had high hopes for this. It is a medium range spell. It creates a 3 square sphere of fire that you can move every turn. You can move it around. It does 2d6 of damage and they save for half damage. It hurts anyone who walks through it. Now, the problem is you can't move it directly onto the same square that an opponent is in, so you can only move it next to them, and it doesn't seem to consistently do damage. I have moved it next to a group so that at least 3 of them were in that outer 3x3 of the sphere, and only one of them got damaged. And I've had other times where opponents have walked through that, they've walked around the center of the sphere, but through the 3x3, the sphere, the very center square they didn't touch, but they walked through the sides and didn't take any damage from it at all. So in early access, it may be a little bit bugged. If they fix it though, it will be a great spell to do things like block doorways and stuff like that. Or if you've got a melee line of opponents in front of your fighters, drop it behind your opponents, and so that it burns them but not your fighters, and you'll get damage every round until they move. So it will be a good spell if they fix it, but at the moment it is probably to be avoided because it just doesn't work properly. I've tried it multiple times in multiple different ways, and it worked. It doesn't work consistently against undead, and when it did work against humans, it only affected 1 out of the 3 that were in range of it. Hold Person, one of my favorite spells. It affects 1 creature at a medium range of 12. It lasts for 1 minute. They do get a wisdom save to avoid the paralysis. You get advantage on attacks. If you attack from a neighboring cell, it's automatically a critical hit. So it's a wonderful spell to have and to use. Highly recommend it. Invisibility. I haven't played with this enough to be entirely sure whether I like it or not. It's unclear from the description whether you can attack and still remain invisible. The description makes it sound like you can, but traditionally that's not how invisibility spells work. So take that at your own risk. It does have the ability, if you cast it as a higher spell level, so if you cast it as a level 3, you can choose 2 people to become invisible, not 1. So that is useful, but I don't really think it's that useful at this point. Knock. Knock is currently broken in early access. Hopefully it will be fixed before the game is released, so if you're seeing this after release, it should be working at that point. The description here is a little vague because it says the target is 1 person, which you don't cast Knock on a person, you cast it on an object. It has a range of 12, which is fine, and then it says the duration is 8 hours, which it's supposed to be instant. And I have tried multiple things. I've tried casting it on chests, I've tried casting it on doors. I can never get it to work. So in early access, I would check and see if they fixed it before you consider taking it. So check through the change log of the game and see if they fixed it yet. Maybe check some forums or whatever. But as of the time of this video, it doesn't work. Levitate. It can be useful. I have not yet tried it in combat as an offensive ability to take control of an opponent. I wanted to, but I kept forgetting to do it. So if you're in an area with a lot of verticality, you could take control of an opponent, raise them up as high as you could, and then break the concentration and force them to drop. But I've not seen if that does a lot of damage. I know that if someone breaks their concentration when flying, they take damage. They should here as well, but I haven't tried it. Personally, I just don't think it's that useful. You can get potions and scrolls of levitation. I'd rather use those if I need to levitate. So there is that. Magic weapon I have not used yet, but it will be good. You can use it as a bonus action. It lasts for an hour, so it could be something you could do to buff a weapon. It's unclear if it has to be your item or a companion's. So that may be a stickler there if it's only one of your items. I also believe you probably need that spell to be able to enchant weapons, but I'm not entirely sure. Actually, no, you don't, because I have enchanted a rapier without it. So, yes. Misty Step teleports you up to 6 squares away as a bonus action. Sounds great, but personally, I don't think 6 squares is far enough for it. I would like to see it to be at least 12 for it to be really useful for me, because 6 squares, every opponent can move 6 squares in a turn. So it's not going to help you to get far enough away from an opponent to be able to survive. It is a bonus action, so technically you could use the bonus action at the start of the round, jump away from them, and then cast a spell to, cast Hold Person on them, for example, to stop them moving, or you might have a damage dealing spell that could kill them, but I would like to see that be further. Ray of Enfeeblement. Medium range, but it's only one target. It does last for a minute. It sets into half damage for strength-based attacks. The problem with that is not all your opponents are going to do strength-based attacks. Some of them will be doing dex-based attacks. Some of them will be, if they're casters, will be doing int-based attacks. So I don't find it all of that useful, and you have to maintain concentration. So yeah, I wouldn't take it. If I found it on a scroll, maybe, but that's it. Scorching Ray, definitely on the war list, just like Flaming Sphere and Acid Arrow is. Your go-to damage dealer as a 2nd level spell. You can target 3 opponents, but with Shock Arcanist that makes it 4, so you get 4 rays to shoot. You can shoot them all at the one like you can with Magic Missile, or you can spread them out amongst however many targets you can. It is a ranged hit, so they can miss, which is a bit annoying. But they do 2 to 6 points of fire damage each ray. Okay, and again, like the other spells, you can cast it at a higher level, adding 1 ray per level. Very good spell. I like it a lot. Just be prepared that it's not always going to hit. Okay. See Invisibility, again, one of those spells I wouldn't take. It does last for an hour. It only works on you, and you can perceive invisible creatures. It would be more useful if you could choose who it works on. But so far in the early access anyway, I haven't seen any invisible creatures, so it has limited use in the early access game. Maybe it will be useful later on. Spider Climb is useful. 1 target, whoever you touch. It lasts for an hour, and you basically do walk vertically up a wall. It turns your character on the side, and you basically walk up the wall as if the wall was the floor. But I would rather use a potion or a scroll for it than take it. So those are the spells. What are my recommendations at 2nd level? Scorching Ray. If they fix Flaming Sphere, I would definitely take that. So I'm going to take it now, but if they haven't fixed Flaming Sphere, take Acid Arrow. Okay? Or Hold Person. But I'm going to assume that they will fix Flaming Sphere and it is the better spell because you can move it around, it lasts for a full minute, and you can damage everyone in that 3x3 square, all 9 characters, or potentially 8, depending on whether they finally allow it to exist in the same square as an opponent. Okay, let's go to level 4. So we get an ability score increase or a bonus feat. It's a little... Okay, there's 2 things you could do here. So if you're going to take a bonus feat, I would take Potent Cantrip. What this does is it allows any of your cantrips that they can normally save against, like the Shadow Dagger, like the Acid Splash, and instead they still take half damage from it. Okay? So you're not, if they do make a save, you're not missing out on damage entirely. That is going to vastly increase your damage if you are using cantrips a lot. And in some cases you will, because particularly early on in the game, although by the time you're level 4, you've got enough spells that you can cast that you're not necessarily relying on cantrips quite as much, but it is really good. The other ones that I would look at is Flawless Concentration. Now, you don't have as many spells that you need concentration on, but those ones that you do, like your Hold Persons, like Sleep, like Protection versus Evil and Good, those spells that you do want to use concentration on, you can take up to 10 points of hit damage, of damage before you need to do your Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration. Okay, so that gives you a nice buffer. There are other ones here, Hard to Kill, Enduring Body. They're all nice. Like Enduring Body gives you an extra hit point per level, which will make you even better. We're already at 38 hit points at level 4, so we're doing really good for a mage, for a wizard. But those are really the only other ones that I would pick. But the other option is to take the ability score increase and buff your intelligence up to 20, because that will mean that you're at the best you can be with your intelligence. It will make it 1 point easier for you to hit. And the one thing I haven't mentioned is this bonus of +4 or +5 here also affects the DC roll that opponents have to do to save against your spells. Right? So if you've got intelligence of 20, they will have to roll a 15 or higher to save against your spell. Okay? Actually, I think it's 15 plus whatever the level of the spell is. But anyway, I could be wrong on that. But we need to pick another... Oh, sorry, we get to pick another cantrip here. So it's a toss-up here between Acid Splash or Chill Touch. Okay, if you want to always hit and get that advantage from being able to hit 2 opponents, then take Acid Splash. If you want to stop them from healing, but take the chance that you're going to miss, then take Chill Touch. I'm going to take Acid Splash because we've gone down the potent cantrip route, so this will always hit, and that means that we'll always do at least half damage when we do that. And it can do 2 opponents. You don't have to do 2 opponents, and you can't do the second. You can't put the splash onto the first guy, so there's nothing you can do with that. And then we get to pick 2 more spells here. So, assuming that you took Scorching Ray and Flaming Sphere at first level, you're going to take Acid Arrow now, and then Hold Person. Are my recommendations. Next level. We get... So our proficiency bonus now goes to +5. So that increases our DC for spells. So our DC is now 16. Actually, I think it should be 17. But anyway, a spell attack has increased to +8. And we get some 3rd level spells. So let's now look at 3rd level spells. Bestow Curse. I don't think this is worth being a third level spell. It only affects one opponent. They have to be in touch range, so you've got to be right next to them. It does affect them for an hour, and you can have any one of those effects where you can put disadvantage against their attack roll, against wisdom saving throws, against attacks and spells that deal damage, against strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throws. I just don't feel that this is valid as a third level spell. It particularly because it only affects one opponent, but I didn't create the spell list, so I don't feel it's worth taking. Counterspell. Brilliant spell. I'm glad this spell was added to the spell list, particularly for this game. It allows you as an instant reaction to anytime someone casts a spell, you can instantly counter it as long as you've got enough spell slots left. I found this really useful as soon as I got it. As soon as a mage cast at us, we could just zap that spell away and they couldn't do anything about it. Now be aware people can do the same to you, so just be aware of that, but what it comes down to then is who's got the most counter spells. Do you have more active spells than they have counter spells, basically? And so you just have to keep going. Dispel Magic. Long range, so 24, one target, instantly removes spells. If the spell is level 3 or less, it automatically dispels. If it's higher, you have to make a save throw to get it to work. And you can increase the level that it automatically dispels by casting it as a higher level. It is useful, but I think it's more of a secondary spell. If you find it on a scroll and want to transcribe it into your spell book, I would probably do it that way. Fear. I talk in a lot of my videos about my dislike of fear-based spells. First of all, this is a cone that it does, so you're going to have that same issue where it's only really able to target one opponent standing directly in front of you. If there's 2 or 3, you're not going to be able to hit them all. And when they're feared, they run away. And that makes it hard to concentrate your magic on them, unless you're using something like Magic Missile. So I tend not to use fear, but if you like using fear, then go for it. Fireball. On the war list, it is one of the spells that you want to use. It covers a 4 square area. It does a range of 30, so it's really long range. They can get a saving throw, but it only gives them half damage. So it is a good spell if you can get it off into an area which is away from your opponents. I did have some problems in some cases where furniture and other things in the room that weren't opponents made it hard to line it up directly where I wanted it to be, but it's still a great spell. You definitely want it. Fly. Gives you the one creature that you touch the ability to fly for 10 minutes. It says ally, so you can't use it offensively. I really wouldn't use it. I wouldn't take it. I'd rather get this ability from a scroll or a potion. But it can be useful, but if you can't maintain concentration, you will fall. And you could fall to your death. So be very aware of that. You will want a feather fall as a backup. So haste. Makes an ally faster. So it gives you double speed, +2 armor class. You have an advantage to dexterity saving throws, and you're able to take 1 more action per turn. My only problem is it only hastes 1 ally. It's unclear if you cast it as a higher level whether that increases to 2 allies like some other spells do, like invisibility, for example, did. And you have to maintain concentration for the haste to stay around. So yeah, it's not all that useful. Later on, if there is a group haste spell, that will be better, but I don't know if there is. Hypnotic Pattern. It charms a large group around you, so be aware of that. And they are incapacitated. So unlike a normal charm spell, which just basically gets them to ignore you and not attack you, this actually incapacitates them, okay? But because it's an area centered on you, I don't feel it's as useful. Well, actually, no, it's not centered on you. Sorry. Its range is 24. Okay, so it is quite good. If you want a large area of effect debuff spell, it's actually quite good. So it's a good distance range. It lasts for a minute. So yeah, that it might be a nice one to pick up if you don't have any, if you've got all the other stuff that you really want. Lightning Bolt is on the war list, so it is one of those ones that you're going to do extra damage on straight away. It does 8d6 of damage. They can save for half, so that's huge amounts of damage. Way more. No, it's the same as the Fireball. Yeah, but it goes in a straight line starting at you. So be aware if your companions are in front of you, they're going to get zapped. But yes, as you will do 9d6 of damage as a Shock Arcanist with this if you cast it at 3rd level, and if you cast it at 4th level, you will do 10d6, etc., etc. You want this as soon as you can get it. Stinking Cloud is not on the war list, but it is a fairly useful spell. Covers about the same area as a Fireball, about the same distance, but it incapacitates. Well, it doesn't incapacitate, but no one can see in the area, and it says that they get hurt, but I've actually not seen. It doesn't tell you how much damage they take. I have used it. It is useful to debuff them, but I don't know that it's really as good as it seems like it could be. I think maybe it's a little bit bugged and needs some more work. Tongues, I don't think is that useful. If you can find it on a scroll, take it, but all it does is grant you knowledge of all languages for 1 hour. I would like to see this as a ritual rather than a spell, but there you go. What would I take at level 5? Definitely Fireball and Lightning Bolt are the spells that we want at this level. Not far to go now. What am I doing? Sorry. Level 6, we get Arcane Fury. So once per day, once per long rest, you can add your intelligence bonus to evocation spell damage for 1 minute. So that's several rounds, 6 rounds or 10 rounds, whichever one it is. So it just makes your evocation spells even more damaging. It's not a huge amount of damage because it's only 5 points extra damage, but hey, 5 points extra damage, nothing to be sneezed at. What am I going to take here? I'm definitely going to take Counterspell. And then I would either take Hypnotic Pattern or Stinking Cloud. And I think probably Hypnotic Pattern. Now, what I could have done is at level 5, I could have taken Fireball and Counterspell. And then at level 6, Lightning Bolt and Hypnotic Pattern. That's if you want Counterspell earlier. And it is definitely very, very useful. So consider doing that slight change. But if you want to do like the most damage the soonest, Fireball and Lightning Bolt first. Otherwise, split them up and take Counterspell at level 5. And that really is as far as we can go, because in early access, they don't actually have any of the 4th level spells added to the game yet. So you see here, there's nothing. So I can't tell you what the 4th level spells are and how they can go. But at level 6, at level 6, we have 65 hit points. Let's just go back and inspect our character. He's at level 6. We have 56 hit points, at level 6. Proficiency bonus of +3. When we look over here, we can see... is this what I'm looking for? No, here we go. So our spell attack bonus is +8. Our saving throws is 16, so they have to roll a 16 or higher on a d20, which means they shouldn't be able to save all that often unless they have a bonus to like if they're going to do a wisdom save, they need a bonus to wisdom to be able to bring that down a little bit, or basically bump up their roll a little bit. Depends on which way you think of it. You're going to have 3 third-level spells, 3 second-level spells, and 4 first-level spells, plus your cantrips that you can cast each day between long rests. So that's the build of our Shock Arcanist Battle Mage. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it went so long, but there's a lot to cover when going through all of these spells. I have played a playthrough on a party of 4 Shock Arcanists, and 2 of them were basically built this way, and they were complete tanks. This party got through some of the fights way easier than a melee group did. It is very, very powerful. Even just 1 Shock Arcanist Battle Mage in your party will be very useful. You will have a lot of damage dealing spells there, and you'll be fairly well protected so that you're not going to get hit all the time with arrows and things like that. Your armor class, as I said, by this point, if you've got half plate, it'll be about 18, your armor class. And if it's enchanted half plate, it'll probably be 19 or more. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. If you did, leave a comment down below, and I will see you for the next build video. Thanks a lot. Bye.